Welcome to Unit 11, which is on intelligence and the assessment of intelligence. So that includes a lot of kind of concepts surrounding testing and standardized testing. So first we're going to talk about intelligence and the theories about intelligence. So do we have an inborn general mental capacity or intelligence? And can we quantify this capacity as a meaningful number? And you need to think about what you believe in this instance. What do you think about intelligence? Do you think we are born with an unchanging intelligence that just needs to be fulfilled? Or that it can change over time and it fluctuates? And then do you think we're able to objectively assess and give a meaningful number to intelligence? So intelligence in all cultures is the capacity to understand the world, think rationally, and use resources effectively when faced with challenges. This is intelligence regardless of culture. In research studies, intelligence is whatever the intelligence tests measure, which tends to be school smarts. Okay, so you might say that someone is intelligent, but they actually have a not very high intelligence quotient, which would be the number that the objective intelligence tests yields about that person's intelligence. So remembering the definition of intelligence, who is intelligent? Is Larry the Cable Guy intelligent? Or Sheldon Cooper intelligent? Or are they both intelligent? And that it depends on what you believe about intelligence, right? Like Sheldon Cooper is obviously intelligent, and he's probably intelligent in the way that we think of intelligence. But he's not very emotionally intelligent or socially intelligent, you could say, whereas you might think the opposite of Larry the Cable Guy, rather unintelligent, you would probably say. So conceptual difficulty, psychologists believe that intelligence is a concept and not a thing. So when we think of intelligence as a trait, as a thing, we're committing an error known as reification, where we view an abstract, immaterial concept as if it were a concrete thing. Like, here is your intelligence, and I can define it, and I can hold it. And that's committing reification, because psychologists argue that no, you really can't hold intelligence as if it's concrete. So despite general agreement among psychologists about the nature of intelligence, there are two controversies. One being, is intelligence a single overall ability or several specific abilities? And there's opposing theories on that. And then number two, with modern neuroscience techniques, can we locate and measure intelligence within the brain? Incredibly interesting. So let's talk about our first theory, which is given to us by Charles Spearman. You do need to know all the names in this unit. Of course you do. You need to know them everywhere, but the names are really important in this unit. So he came up with this idea of general intelligence. He believed that there is a single, as in one general factor for all mental ability. He didn't deny that some people have outstanding talents. They might be creative or artistic, or they might be really good at speaking and interpersonal skills, but felt that these differences or those talents shouldn't blind us to a single general intelligence, and saying that there is one factor that a person has that makes them intelligent. And intelligence is that one thing. That doesn't mean that everyone else is dumb or can't be talented. It just means that they don't have that one thing that is intelligence. So Spearman proposed that general intelligence, or G, we do need to know this as G, is linked to many clusters that can be analyzed by factor analysis that create a single underlying aspect of intelligence. And he's saying that we might perform well in many different areas, but that all is because of this one underlying aspect of intelligence. For example, people who do well in vocabulary do well on paragraph comprehension, a cluster that helps define verbal intelligence. Other general factors include spatial ability and a reasoning ability. L.L. Thurstone, who is actually a critic of Spearman, and says, whoa, we can't say that there's this one thing. He analyzed his subjects not on a single scale of general intelligence, but on 7 clusters of primary mental abilities. So the 7 primary mental abilities Thurstone came up with were word fluency, verbal comprehension, spatial ability, perceptual speed, numerical ability, so math, inductive reasoning, and memory. So later, psychologists analyzed Thurstone's data, and a persistent tendency between these clusters, those who excelled in one area scored well on others, suggesting some evidence supporting a G factor that underlies all intelligence. So Thurstone, who back here it says he was a critic of Spearman, right? But in the end, he ends up pretty much supporting G, because he was able to show that in these 7 areas, if someone did well in many of them, if someone did well in one of them, they did well in most of them. And so they're kind of supporting the idea that G means that you're going to do well in all areas. So think of someone you know who is athletic. What makes them athletic? Can you define athleticism? Is being athletic, I think it's a good analogy to having G, in that you say that person is athletic. Therefore, they're going to be good in all sports, right? And they could specialize in one sport, or really, maybe you don't see one person as athletic, but they work so hard in one area that they become good at that sport. That's different than athleticism, right? And like I said, I think that's a good analogy for intelligence. Now let's look at some contemporary intelligence theory. Howard Gardner being our next name, and he supports Thurstone's idea that intelligence comes in multiple forms, meaning he does not agree with G. Gardner notes that brain damage may diminish one type of ability, but not others. So there has to be many facets of intelligence and many areas where people can excel and be intelligent. People with savant syndrome will excel in abilities not related to general intelligence. So they'll be like, it's called being a savant, right? So they're a savant at the piano, meaning they, at 7 years old, very early on, are able to play the piano like Mozart or whoever was really good at the piano. Yet they struggle oftentimes in many emotional, interpersonal skills and other areas. There's a cognitive delay in other areas. So Gardner believes in what's called multiple intelligences, saying there's 9 different forms of intelligence, each relatively independent of the others, saying it's not how smart you are, it's how you are smart. So these 9 being each of the intelligences that Gardner believes in. You need to know every single one of them. So we're going to start up here with existential. Existential is looking at life, death, and ultimate realities and thinking about, why am I here? What lies beyond this world? Interpersonal is the ability to understand other people. Intrapersonal is having an understanding of yourself, and knowing who you are, what you can do. So intrapersonal, being inside. Naturalist is the ability to discriminate among living things, as well as sensitivity to other features of the natural world, hence naturalist. And then bodily and kinesthetic is the capacity to use your whole or parts of your body to solve problems, make something, put on a production, right? Like, so this is like the dance, and you could say parts of acting. Musical or rhythmic, capacity to think in music, be able to hear patterns, recognize them, perhaps even manipulate them. Visual spatial, ability to present the spatial world internally in your mind. So can you take a Rubik's Cube and turn it around in your mind? Or can you take, a box of some sort, or your house, and can you turn it around and understand it? Logical mathematical is the ability to understand the underlying principles of some kind of causal system, math. And verbal linguistic, capacity to use language to express what's on your mind and to understand other people. Make sure that you're pausing this video and you write down all of these, knowing what these are. Robert Sternberg is our next theorist. He also agrees with Gardner in saying there's not just one G factor, but suggests a triarchic theory with 3 intelligences rather than the 9. So if IQ rules, it is only because we let it, and when we let it rule, we choose a bad master. We get ourselves into this test mess. Okay, so he says that there's analytical intelligence, which is what's assessed by intelligence tests. Okay, that's the analytical intelligence. There's creative intelligence, intelligence that makes us adapt to novel situations, generating novel ideas. Novel meaning new, not you're a writer. Okay, so new situations generating new ideas. And creativity being exactly that, your ability to come up with things that have never been come up with before. Practical intelligence, this is the intelligence required for everyday tasks. So street smart's more practical, you can use it every day intelligence. So Sternberg proposed 7 types of people based on combinations of his 3 intelligences. So you want to make sure that you write these down. So we've got the analyzer, creator, practitioner, analytic creator, analytic practitioner, creative practitioner, and then the consummate balancer of all 3. So you should be able to decipher, given each of the names, what of the 3 intelligences are playing a role here. Then we have emotional intelligence with another name from Daniel Goleman. He believes emotional intelligence, or EQ, is a set of skills that underlie the accurate assessment, evaluation, expression, and regulation of emotion. He says it's also incredibly important. This aspect of intelligence underlies the ability to get along with others. It shows that while individuals may not have high traditional IQ scores, they can be extremely successful due to their high IQ because they can read people, right? And that a lot of times your success in your career is because of your ability to network and work well with other people. If you don't have that, no matter how intelligent you may be, you're not going to go far. So some components. The ability to perceive emotion, meaning recognize emotion in faces, music, and stories. So perceiving, understanding it. Understand emotion, meaning to predict emotion, how they change and blend. So understanding the fluidity of emotions and being able to kind of verbally say what is that emotion. Managing it, expressing emotions in different situations, so your ability to then express and manage your own emotions in a productive way, and then use emotions, utilizing emotions to adapt or be creative, and that you don't shun your emotions and say, I'm terrible for feeling this way, but you use it in another avenue. So some criticisms of Gardner, or of Goleman's theory. Gardner and others criticize the idea of emotional intelligence, questioning whether we stretch this idea of intelligence too far when we're applying it to emotions. Plus, it has to be quantified in a rigorous manner, and emotional intelligence is really difficult to test. There's also some controversy surrounding the teaching of emotional intelligence, as many believe this should not be taught by anyone other than families, and that it's your family that teaches you emotional regulation and expression. So let's talk about creativity. It's the ability to produce ideas that are both new or novel and valuable, and they can't just be really cool and new. They've got to be valuable. It correlates somewhat with intelligence and includes the following. The expertise, so a well-developed knowledge base, and that's kind of like your traditional idea of intelligence, right? Imaginative thinking, so the ability to see things in new, novel ways. Adventuresome personality, so seeking new experiences rather than following the pack. So keeping an open mind to new experiences and not getting the same thing on the dollar menu every time, right? Intrinsic motivation, so you're motivated to be creative from within, not because you're being paid or rewarded. And a creative environment. Creativity blooms in creative and supportive environments, and when it's shunned, it's not as likely to bloom, right? So is intelligence neurologically measurable? Recent studies indicate some correlation, about positive 0.4, which doesn't sound strong, but in a correlation, especially with neurology, is pretty decent, between brain size and intelligence. As brain size decreases with age, scores on verbal intelligence also decrease. So gray matter concentration in people with high intelligence. So here's the thing, it's not saying that your brain has to be huge in order for you to be intelligent. It's saying it needs to be dense. So gray matter in your brain being where neural networks are, and that's where your thinking ability is, and therefore your intelligence, and then there's a higher concentration of gray area or gray matter in people with intelligent brains. Studies of brain functioning show that people who score high in intelligence tests perceive stimuli faster, retrieve information from memory quickly, and show faster brain response times. This is the true indicator of intelligence. Someone might have everything in their brain, but if they can't access it, they're not able to show that they are in fact intelligent, and therefore are not. So people with higher intelligence respond correctly faster to the above question. long side on the left or the right.